Hey everyone, and welcome to this LinkedIn Live. Today we have got, it's basically a news flash. We've put this together very, very quickly because there has been some incredible news coming through from Google that is going to really disrupt quite a lot of advertisers. And we thought, right, we better try and gather up all of the information, get our absolute expert on a LinkedIn Live, which is Ian, who'll introduce himself in a second, and try and share with as many people as possible before the deadline of the 15th of June. 15th of June, people, you need to know this before the 15th of June. To give as much value to all the people who are our clients, who might want to work with us in the future, but most importantly, a part of our community. So I'm Jaye. I'm the founder and CEO of Launch. We're a performance marketing agency that is designed and obsessed with growth. Ian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ian. I'm the head of data and analytics here at Launch. Been with Launch for nearly 4 years and always trying to keep up with all the different changes that Google seem to throw at us. So it's always fun. It's always good.
And we've done quite a few of these, Ian, haven't we? Because over the years, there's no question that data and measurement and all of those signals that are coming in are far more important than ever before. When I first started doing this 14 years ago, I can tell you that most people probably didn't even have the Google Ads tag on their website. But now we've got cookie compliance, we've got GDPR, we've got lots and lots of complexity around data and measurement of marketing. So let's break it down. What's happened, Ian, and why do we need to care?
Yeah, so Google released sort of towards the end of the month, beginning of April, there's going to be a change to how Google Ads collects the data. Previously with GA4, we were able to use GA4. There's a setting in there called Google Signals. If you was to enable that, it acted as almost like a safety net from the Google Ads connection. So if Google Ads couldn't connect or understand what was being accepted in terms of your cookie banner, it would use GA4 for the signals to send more information through to it. That's now being withdrawn, or sort of that sort of link is now being cut, and now they're focusing purely on the technical ability of your cookie banner. Because Google Ads will only look at that and not look at GA4. So this is quite a big change, because, and my opinion, undoubtedly there's going to be a change in performance and measurement within that, but it also depends on how robust your cookie banner actually is, and that's the most important thing. So many times we've seen clients that their cookie banner isn't working, or potential clients, rather, when we're looking at pitching and auditing accounts. And it almost seems as though the cookie banner is kind of an afterthought. But for your Google Ads to work, and to work really well, this now needs to be part of your setup, your tech stack, your strategy needs to be focused on the cookie banner.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. I want to say, though, for those people who are watching live or watching back on LinkedIn or on YouTube, there is a blog that sits under all of this that is very easy to follow, that writes down what you need to do. This video will sit alongside it to help bring some of it to life and give people an opportunity to ask questions. So if you are watching it live, please do drop your questions in. Please note there's like a 10-second delay. So if we don't ask it straight away, it's because we're waiting for the question to come through. But there is some complexity around it. So first of all, shall we start with cookie banners? Some of the problems that you see and why they exist, what they're meant to do, and what it needs to do in this instance.
Yeah, so everyone knows that the cookie banner is there to protect the user's consent of what they want tracked and what they don't want tracked. And this is one of the biggest things that Google has always tried to do over the past sort of 5 years or so, certainly since GA4 started to come through. And it's just to protect users' users' consent. So what they need to do essentially is that banner needs to respect everything that user has asked from. So if they decline the cookies, it needs to ensure that no cookies are dropped, especially for things like Google Analytics, Google Ads, that kind of thing, and any other kind of third-party marketing tools that you're using. But the biggest thing is when a user, when a cookie banner starts on the website, it needs to have denied by default. So we're seeing quite a few times where the cookie banner is just allowing cookies to set, and the cookie banner is essentially redundant. So that's where we need to make sure that the cookie banner's logic is picking up as a denied state first, to make sure that they're not collecting anything till they've got explicit consent. And then once they do accept it, then the cookies are dropped, because that is when they've accepted it. So that's the key point for cookie banners. It's working correctly.
Okay. And a little while ago, we did a webinar with Hybrid Legal where we talked in detail about the consequences of this. It is an advertiser's responsibility, therefore the brand's responsibility, to make sure that that cookie setup is correct and compliant. And so this then is another layer on top of that. Is that right, Ian?
Yeah, well, Google have always said that the cookie banner needs to be working. So previously, when we had that conversation with Hybrid Legal, it was around running the risk of Google crawling your website and seeing that your banner wasn't working, and then raising an issue with that to essentially say your cookie banner is not working, you're non-compliant, you've got 28 days to fix it. And we've seen clients where they had their ads account paused because of that, regardless of spend. So they were really trying to push the fact that you need a website that's compliant. I think they're trying to cover their backs. They tried to go they tried to delete the third-party cookie, which never worked. So now they're trying to make sure that it's being done correctly. So this is probably not, so it's another layer, but it's an addition to it. I think they're now trying to say, if you don't have it working correctly, then your Google Ads performance is going to be impacted now, because it only looks at your cookie banner. Whereas before, you had other things that would be able to send that information. So they're tightening their grip on it, but also trying to make it as simple as possible. It is, does that cookie banner say yes? If it does, send all the data you can through it. If it doesn't, then there's some, depending on how your cookie banner is set up, because you've got basic and advanced consent mode. If you're running advanced consent mode, we'll talk about this shortly, but it will start to send anonymous pings and model the data. So they're trying to fix it. There's 3 different options that you've got, and that's where they're trying to tighten their grip, essentially.
Okay, so before we talk about those options, one of the reasons that this is super important is that people say, advertisers might say that Google is becoming more and more, Google Ads is becoming more and more of a black box with PMAX, with less manual controls, with AI Search Max, all of these AI-driven, signal-driven campaigns. So that's the crucial name, isn't it? Signals, all of these data points that it's pulling in to be able to make decisions on the advertiser's behalf of who is most likely to convert, or whatever the goal is that the ads campaign is set up to do. So how does this disrupt the signals? So
with the consent that Google will set, there'll be 4 different parameter options. So you'll have things like ad storage, personalization storage, and analytics storage, which is Google Analytics. And essentially, if any of that was accepted, then Google Ads would be able to pick up that signal from GA4. And if you were logged into a Google product, GA4 can use that information that you're passing through to it and send it to Google Ads and say, this person with this email address has completed this. Now, the impact here is GA4 is now being ignored completely by Google Ads. So the 2 things you need to focus on is the ad storage and ad personalization, which is for remarketing. So if either of those are set to denied, or if the user goes in and selects the manager's preferences and says, I don't want that, then Google will only look at that information. If it's accepted, then everything is almost opening the floodgates. So if you're logged into Chrome, you're logged into Gmail, anything like that, all of that information that you share with Google will go straight to Google Ads. It gets as much information as it possibly can. If you deny it, but your website is running advanced consent mode, Google will be able to pick up things anonymously. So it will be able to go, this signal is able to send to you because we're using your logged in as Google Mail or Chrome, but we can't send you everything. So it will send it and model the data as best as it can. So that's where they're going with the 2 different options at the moment.
And what do you see as the consequences of that? How are the advertisers, the brands that might be watching this back, how are they going to then see a difference in their data or campaigns?
The bottom line is, if your cookie banner isn't set up correctly, then you could see a massive dip in performance in your Google Ads, because So the three different options that I was talking about before is you've got basic consent mode, where it is almost binary. It is, have they accepted, have they not? If they haven't, nothing gets through. It's a brick wall. So whilst you're technically compliant because you're running consent mode, if it's the basic consent mode, you're losing all of the people that decline your cookies. And there's nothing you can do about that. We have to give the user that choice. So, you know, even things like having a reject all button, there's things that you need to have on your cookie banner. We have to show that we're giving the user the choice. And if they decline, you're going to lose that data. So if you're running basic consent mode, that's an issue, because all of a sudden you'll start to see that drop. It's usually around 30% of users decline cookie banner. So you don't really want to see your Google Ads data falling by that amount. Advanced consent mode is there for a reason, to help that data be modeled. And then that will hopefully reduce that drop from when people are declining cookies. But then the other one is if it's not working at all, you're either denied at a full state or you're accepting everything and then you're non-compliant. So that's where there's a bigger problem. You don't want to deny everything, because then it will just completely fall apart. But if you're accepting everything, then you're completely non-compliant, and Google will pick up on that now, because it's starting to be able to pick up what you're using with your cookie banner. So it's quite
and not only can your ads be then stopped, but also the ICO can come after you if you aren't compliant, because there's a legal obligation to be compliant as well, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. So there's two things. You've got GDPR, which is your management of the data, which is more when the ICO would come in at that point, is if you're collecting data, you're not storing it correctly. But you've then got e-privacy laws, where you're not respecting what the user's doing. And if that data is being shared with a third party, that's where the ICO might come in and go, you've given that information to someone else without their consent. So either way, and we've been talking about this for many years, Jay, look, we especially within my measurement department and within launch, the first thing we look at for an audit is, are you compliant? Because you have to make sure that you're collecting it correctly. And if you're not doing it, then yeah, there's much bigger implications rather than measurement falling as well. So yeah.
And that's one of the things that you're doing most of at the moment is data hygiene audits and compliance audits, and because ultimately media won't be as successful if that data hygiene isn't there. I think we've got also a resource that I will pop up on the screen. I know we're going to also bring it up at the end. But just to give everyone the best opportunity to go through basically the tick list of compliance and making sure that that people understand the basics of this. What other things should they be aware of, and what other things do you want to make sure that you get across today, as well as the blog that we've obviously got live?
Yeah, so one thing that we're doing, as you mentioned, Jay, we're going through every one of our clients here at launch and auditing their setup, and it's essentially just to give almost a stamp of approval to say we've checked your cookie banner and it's doing this, or it's working as correct as it can do. One thing that I really want to get across is, if your cookie banner is running advanced consent mode and it's running as it should do, and it's doing everything it can, I still believe you'll see a difference in your performance. So we have to manage that with clients, to notice that it might not be a dip in performance, but it might be a dip in how it's being tracked, or the measurement behind it.
And
so
the visibility.
The visibility of it, absolutely. So the 15th of June, we might start to see that, and that's purely because people are just declining cookies. So the tech behind it can be working as much as it could do, but if users don't trust your brand, that's another thing that we're talking about, especially in the blog, is you have to trust the website that you're visiting to be able to say, I accept the cookies that you're going to be setting. So a good privacy page, a good brand awareness of, say, we look after your data. We don't just share it with everybody. We only use it for this and use it for that. These are the things that you can try and encourage users to say, I'm happy to accept that. Because if they decline, then there's nothing we can do about it. And you're relying on Google's modeling to ensure that your performance is being tracked correctly. So that's really certainly something that I would suggest everybody to do. We're looking to see
I would just also add to that, Ian, the simple fact of user experience of, because of all the different sizes of devices and the multiple ways that your website can render, ensuring that it is possible to accept the cookie banner. I've had instances where you can't interact with the website, depending on which device you're on. So using things like Microsoft Clarity, or really understanding and working closely with the web developer to make sure that on all devices it is possible to accept or decline cookies. And I've noticed brands being able to own that more with a bit more personality, fun brands talking about, it's cookie time, or, there are ways other than just the very basic Cookie Pro, or whichever type. At least putting them in your brand colors is like a minimum requirement.
Exactly that, yeah, and it's building that trust. I think that reminds me of it might be a little bit off piece, but actually, Jay, when you're, when you're in a when you go onto a flight and they do the safety stuff of where the exits are and stuff like that. Do you remember when British Airways brought out their new one? We're using celebrities to do it, and because people weren't listening to the safety things, people were bored of it. So having cookie banners that are, again, not something that is seen as legally binding, but also a bit more fun, but a bit of trust to say, and more importantly, a bit more open. We use your cookies to allow us to do this for your experience and for your experience with us as a brand. That the more open you are about what we're doing, I believe the more users will be able to accept it, essentially, rather than just blocking it off.
It's the first interaction that a potential customer has with your website. That's literally the first thing that they have to do. And so for it to be no personality, difficult to use, not in your brand colors, is literally like the worst user experience ever. I think that's also not often talked about. So I'm glad we raised that in. But I also interrupted you when you were in full flow about something else. So what were you going to say?
No, it's all right. I've forgotten now. No, I'm joking. So so we've got the advanced consent mode. So at launch, what we're doing is we're auditing everybody and essentially saying that we're going to give a stamp of approval to say you're in the best possible position to minimize disruption. However, this is what we think might happen. Then you've got people running basic consent mode, where we essentially say you're in the position where you're compliant because you're running consent mode, but because it's basic, there's a huge chance this is going to happen with your Google Ads performance. And that's key, because people might be thinking, oh, my cookie banner's working, it's fine, but actually it's not in the best possible position to minimize disruption. And also the clients that we have, if there's a rare chance that it's not running correctly, we will provide that information and go, well, if you don't fix this, this is the impact. We, as an agency, we look after some cookie banners internally. So we use OneTrust, Cookie Yes, and also Cookie Pro. So if we spot that there's been a change and we need to fix that, we'll go and fix it. But some of the clients that have their own cookie banner, certainly add-ons within Shopify, you can buy a plugin for a cookie banner. If they're not set up correctly, we will spot that and we'll say, actually, this needs to be fixed because you're in the worst possible position. So that's the 3 steps that we're going through at the moment, just to make sure that everybody's technically sound of what needs to happen.
You definitely hit a moment, because I know that your LinkedIn post blew up, and I would definitely say make sure you give Ian a follow, but you also sign up to our LinkedIn newsletter, because there's news like this breaking all of the time. This is a particularly big one. I know that, thank you, Hassan. It's great that that this has been helpful to you. And yeah, do feel free to kind of share it with people. This guide here will really help, and it gives you links to all of the blog posts. Any closing thoughts, Ian? I know that that you're helping all of our clients at the moment, but should people be putting Google Analytics GA4 annotations in, or we obviously know some of these dates. The 15th of June is when you're likely to see data disruption. So I suppose performance marketing teams should be talking about their wider marketing and CFO and business about the fact that they might see a drop in performance at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think GA4 has annotations there for this exact reason. I think the biggest thing is where GA4 looks at performance of the overall website. Some people may not necessarily take that information and be that worried about it because it's site performance and there's no real money in that. But with your Google Ads, you're spending your budget, you're spending your marketing budget, and if that performance starts to drop, then alarm bells start ringing. So it's really important that you're aware of this change just in case there's a significant drop. But before all of that, make sure that you're speaking to people in your team that are fully versed on cookie management systems, just to make sure that you're up to date. It's really easy to check. The team have got an audit process all ready to go. So if you need to reach out to me, absolutely give us a call or DM me and I'll be able to talk you through it. And if it's not working, then there's ways to fix it. And now's the time to do it. Awesome. One thing I did also want to add is that there's lots to talk about server-side tracking. There's lots to talk about how this may improve your data as well. This has no impact. So if you're running server-side tracking and you're paying for certain server-side tracking services, or you've got it custom built, if the cookies are not set, the server-side tracking also has to abide by that cookie. So it will impact you regardless. So make sure that you're not in a position where you feel like server-side tracking is working and you're okay and you're exempt from it. For everybody needs to make sure that they're working 100%.
So this is a really good opportunity for advertisers and brands to do basically a good audit of what their data set up. Have they got as many signals as possible? If you haven't already got server-side tracking implemented, that could be a good way to counterbalance some of the data loss that you might get from this. We normally see what percentage increase from installing server-side tracking?
So one of our clients, we've seen over 3 months, which is around 12% increase in reporting, essentially. So it's not new customers that they would never have had. It's actually the visualization of it. So server-side tracking is very very important, and it works really more on first-party data. So just to add to that is, if you're collecting information on a first-party basis, again, the cookie banner doesn't necessarily impact because it's regarding third-party cookies about what you do when you share that information. So if you're collecting information on a first-party basis and it sits on your servers or it sits on your ecosystem, that's okay, because you're collecting that information and you're not going anywhere and it's staying on your domain. It's when we start to send information to Google Ads, GA4, using a third-party cookie, and what information they collect is what they're trying to make sure that they're collecting it compliantly as possible. So just ensure that if you have got server-side tracking running, it should be first-party data and where that data is going, and if you can use that information when this change happens. But if it's not, then you need to make sure your cookie banner is still working, so you've got information through the third party, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. Well, that was really great, Ian. It's a murky world of data and measurement, and it sounds like it's only getting even more complex. So this is relevant for anybody running any form of Google Ads on their for their brand. So please make sure you share it far and wide. Download. Hopefully that point works on this on the screen. But download the guide. Make sure you follow Ian on LinkedIn and sign up for our LinkedIn newsletter. And I hope that this has been helpful. So thank you so much, Ian. And we'll be back, I'm sure, with more updates soon.